And he wrote back saying he still thought I owed her an apology. And then a couple of days before I came up here, I got another email from him. And I got to say, he's really a stand-up guy, because he was apologizing to me for jumping all over my case. And he related the following story: that he'd gone out to dinner with Andrea Smith, and he'd known her for a long time, which is why he'd jumped all over my case. And he wanted to talk to her about this situation, and they got to the part about how she had agreed not to represent as Cherokee anymore. And she says, well, yes, that's kind of true, but I just agreed I wouldn't do it publicly. I can still do it privately. And he tried to question her a little bit more about her dissent, and she said it was just too emotional. She couldn't talk about it right now. So they went on to something else, and he sent me an email and apologized to me, which I really appreciate. I mean, most people, if they get up in your face and then they get new information later, they're not going to get back to you and apologize. I really got to hand it to him. I don't know what this latest pile higher and deeper is. I will not represent as Cherokee in public, but I will do it in private. Her email handle at Michigan was Jalagi, which is Cherokee in our language. I find that an act of representation as Cherokee, but she never denied that she was representing as Cherokee. She just agreed to quit. At least one of her publishers, South End Press, still has her on their website as Cherokee, and of course they still have Ward Churchill as Kituwa Band Cherokee, and AK Press, the outfit that published Churchill's rant about Little Eichmanns, they also call him Kituwa Band Cherokee. Cherokees don't appreciate that. I'm here to tell you. You know, when two Indians from the same tribe meet for the first time, the conversation is invariably some permutation of, who are your folks? Now, if they're Navajo, they go through this thing about introducing themselves by clan. And most of the rest of us don't have that custom. But we still go through this, who are your relatives number, and the object is just to place that individual somewhere in the community. For an ordinary Indian, this is natural. This is how we meet each other. But for a fake, this is a hostile act. I mean, you're threatening them if you ask them who their folks are. When I first arrived in Indiana, I got this flyer. And on another IU campus, they were having some festivities. And they had a fellow who was offering authentic Cherokee sweat lodge ceremonies at a reasonable price. And well, those of you who are from Oklahoma and know a lot of Cherokees, you know that that's not our purification ceremony. You occasionally suck us into a sweat lodge, but that's just because we're being, you know, we go along with it. Same reason we eat peyote. I remember I was in a sweat lodge with this Lakota guy once, and ever since then I've referred to him as Man Roaster. He does not appreciate the moniker, but he knows that I'm inexperienced with sweats. He wants to call me ground hugger, but what can I say? So anyway, I called this guy up on the telephone, and I introduced myself by my given name and my family name, and I try to drop the names of a couple of individuals that I know in the Eastern Band, because I figure on account of geography he's going to be Eastern Band, and this is probably why I don't know him, because if he was some kind of wheel in the Tahlequah area, I would know him. But I'm just curious what this whole deal is. And I finished introducing myself, and it's a fairly long deal, and there's just silence at the other end. So finally I say, where are you from? And what I mean is, Are you folks from Oklahoma? Are you folks from North Carolina? And he just exploded. I mean, he called me everything in the book. I'm going to delete the expletives even though I go along with bullshit, because I mean, he was really cussing me out and told me it was none of my business where he was from. I got no writ to ask him anything. And I just kind of, you know, put the phone down and called up the guy at the other IU campus who had hired him and just said, look, I'm enrolled Cherokee. I've got the documents to prove it. I don't think this guy is, but I can't say for sure, but I can say for sure that the Sweat Lodge is not a Cherokee ceremony, and if it was, there wouldn't be anyone offering it at a reasonable price anyway. And he didn't get invited back the next year. This brings up the question about all this fakery. Who should care? Why does it matter? What should we do about it? What can we do about it? I must admit that part of my personal motivation in the Sweat Lodge issue was that I simply get weary of being taken for a Plains Indian by anyone who hears I'm Indian. Now, I got no problem with nothing but respect for my friends who used to live in teepees, but my people have lived in wooden houses for practically forever. And I love bison meat, but I get it in the meat market. And I don't have a war bonnet. Neither does my dad. He worked construction and he wore a hard hat. So, you know, sometimes it just seems like being American Indian, enrolled or not, is all stereotype all the time, at least outside of Indian country. So it bothers us personally. When I went up for tenure, I got to admit, well, this time when I went up for tenure, I worked every way I knew to get American Indians as outside reviewers. But the reasons are pretty simple and don't have anything to do with epistemological privilege. My choices of research questions would be easily understood by Indians and a little bit more difficult to understand by not-Indians for this reason. I'm in the social sciences, and I tend to phrase my questions about the Indian problem as looking at the colonization problem rather than saying we, citizens of the United States, have an Indian problem. I tend to say we Indians have a colonial problem, and I look at solutions from the other direction. I don't have to explain that to you guys. You guys know that. And the other thing is the standing of the journals where I can publish these kind of things. There are 3 journals that will publish Indian policy from the Indian point of view. There are many, many more, but there are 3 that are right up at the top. And that would be Wakazo Shah, American Indian Culture and Research Journal, and American Indian Quarterly. And there are a whole bunch of others, but they're on another level. Those 3 are up there. And if I get Indians reviewing me, they understand that. If I get non-Indians reviewing me, these journals don't mean anything. You know, there's no way to rank them. And believe me, I tried. I tried to come up with all kinds of arguments about why these were the leading journals. And the bottom line is, if you're in the field, you know it. And if you're not in the field, well, you're just going to have to believe it. I have reviewed articles for 2 out of 3 of those journals. I've been a referee. And they're not that easy to get into. But it's hard to explain to a tenure committee. So I looked for Indians. The tools I bring to bear on my research questions come from literature of law, anthropology, psychology, sociology, economics, history, political science. But these literatures have no race. And I doubt very much that these tools have more or less practical application depending upon the race of the person who's using the tools. To the individual back in our other meeting there who was complaining about political science and not teaching about the significance of these treaties to the formation of the state of Michigan, I would just say Not that political science is at fault, but these guys are not very good political scientists if they can't figure that out. I mean, there's something missing in what they're teaching, but it's not, it has no ethnicity. It's just wrong, you know. It's incorrect.